almost sovereign authority within universities. It is arguably more important for the university to prove itself to blacks than it is for blacks to prove themselves to the university. And yet, in the end, challengers can never win more than concessions, and the power they wield is so tied to their race that it tends to ghettoize them within institutions. It carves out minority tracks like student services and education departments within universities or human resources within corporations. Challengers, unlike bargainers, ride on the back of their otherness rather than dispel it. Difference is their wedge and their power, so they have no positive bridge to the masses of Americans, and over time they are easily seduced into believing more in themselves as blacks than as human beings. Iconic Negroes, on the other hand, stand out as individuals, as black people whose racial pride is not exclusionary. It is true that they too wear a mask, and that a certain discipline of self-suppression is required to stay within the contours of that mask. It is also true that the risk is on them when they make a gift of innocence and trust to whites, some of whom are clearly undeserving. But it is important to remember, given the shameful history of white supremacy, that there is nothing less than a profound, even ferocious need in white America to dissociate from racism. This need, at its core, is a craving simply to be seen as decent against the cultural stigma that paints all whites as racists. In the pinch between this stigma and the simple need to feel decent, there is enormous tension and energy. And this is precisely the energy that bargainers tap into when they offer whites the benefit of the doubt. Their gesture of trust comes back in wave after wave of gratitude and goodwill. And this is what wraps people like Oprah in a special charisma, a beneficence that her white competitors can never have. She gives Americans their decency. Iconic Negroes don't win many concessions from American institutions, but their willingness to see decency in the American people gives them a transformative power that challengers can never have. The Cosby Show gave Americans in New Mexico and Maine and Idaho a new way of seeing and thinking about black Americans. It did not solve the country's race problem, but it did nudge the culture in a positive direction. It was transformative. Chapter 10. Born to Bargain. Barack Obama is not only the first black American to plausibly run for the American presidency, he is the first to test the special charisma of the iconic Negro in national politics. Colin Powell clearly had iconic Negro status in the mid-90s, and he might have been the first to test that status in the political arena. But in the end, he demurred. So it has fallen to Obama to break this ground. Can an Oprah-like charisma translate into actual votes? We know it can sell things, and it has already taken a man only 2 years out of the Illinois state legislature and launched him into a serious bid for the presidency. But can it take him all the way? I often see Oprah for President bumper stickers, the gratitude factor given voice in political metaphor. But Obama will need more than metaphorical power. Racially divided societies throw up iconic figures who seem to transcend the divide. And in America, such figures always imply a very idealistic ideology of white absolution and black redemption, a perfectly ecumenical distribution of much-needed innocence. Oh, if only whites had no association with racism, and if only blacks had no association with inferiority, then wouldn't the world be a better place? This is an ideological image, one to rally people behind, like the classless society. But can it flutter down to earth and play a role in presidential politics? Barack Obama is nothing if not an iconic Negro who is expressly identified with this ideology. It gives him his aura. and he must wonder at times where all the attention and affection come from. His wife, Michelle, often seems mystified by the waves of goodwill that wash over her husband, and she is given to making little deflating remarks about his household negligence that protest the idea of his specialness, even as she campaigns for him. It would have to be intimidating to be married to someone who is suddenly numinous in the culture. Obama himself may not have set out to achieve this effect, but there it is, and he has to be much more concerned now with how to sustain it. How to stay in that iconic territory where goodwill rolls right up to your front door. One thing Obama instinctively knows is the art of bargaining. To this manner he seems to have been born. In Dreams from My Father, we see the high school senior Barack Obama consciously scheming to bargain with his own mother. A friend of his had been arrested for drug possession, and his mother marched into his room, obviously worried that he was involved in the same activity, and demanded the details of the arrest. Obama gave her a reassuring smile and patted her hand and told her not to worry. This, he wrote, was usually an effective tactic, because people were satisfied so long as you were courteous and smiled and made no sudden moves. They were more than satisfied. They were relieved. Such a pleasant surprise to find a well-mannered young black man who didn't seem angry all the time. Well, there it was, the virtual definition of bargaining when he was no more than a senior in high school. There, already was the gift of innocence, the well-mannered young black man trusting his mother not to disbelieve him, giving her the benefit of the doubt by implying that she was above doubting him. He, in his largesse, would endure her suspicions without racial anger, and she would be relieved at being spared that anger. Obama himself acknowledged the use of this racial strategy with his mother, and, in her relief, she would be grateful to him. She would overlook his likely involvement with drugs. Even the very young Barack Obama was something of an artist at bargaining, and if he was not secure in his black identity, he certainly knew white people. He knew how much they dreaded a truly angry confrontation with a black. Their worst fears could be realized in such confrontations. They could be smeared as racist, with nothing behind them save their race's actual reputation for racism. History could convict them. The only problem for the young Obama was that his mother didn't buy his bargaining. She had just sat there, studying my eyes, her face as grim as a hearse. But though his mother could not be bargained with, others clearly responded to the well-mannered young black man who didn't seem angry all the time. Moreover, Barack Obama seems to have little talent for anger, which will always make the challenger's mask an awkward fit. Bargaining is his natural métier, because he seems to understand it as a kind of charm, a charm that seizes on that first pleasant surprise that whites experience when they encounter a black who is not angry. How many times growing up would he have noticed that little surprise in whites? And how long would it have taken him to realize that it amounted to opportunity?